let's talk about Peace by Gene Wolfe. This was, I think, his fourth novel, after Operation Aries, Fifth Head of Cerberus, Devil in a Forest, and this piece, 1975. So very early comparatively, given he was publishing up to, well, posthumously in 2020. Long writing career. And though Fifth Head is often seen as his breakout novel-length work rather than short story, Peace is his first explicitly written novel. Operation Aries, I think, might have been written as a novel, but was severely mucked about with, and I think Devil in a Forest as well as Fifth Head were in different formats originally. But yeah, Peace is often considered his breakout. It's very hard to sometimes, in some ways, review Gene Wolfe books in the way you review other stuff, partly because of the mysteries and interesting tidbits, but also because these just leave you thinking for so long that they take a while to process, and then you never process them. They go on forever. You're constantly thinking about them. I think about his books all the time, and I think this is something where I'm still trying to work out all kinds of things and think about all kinds of things. But the basic idea is that it is the melancholy memoir of Alden Dennis Weir, an embittered old man living out his last days in a small Midwestern town. The novel reveals a miraculous dimension as the narrative unfolds. For Weir's imagination has the power to obliterate time and reshape reality, transcending even death itself. Powerful, moving, and uncompromisingly honest, Peace ranks alongside the finest literary works of our time. This is, though it's early Wolfe, it's very much mature Wolfe. It may be the most lyrically and beautifully written of all his books that I've read, and he can write exceptionally beautifully. But this is constant, and it's partly because of the mode, the tone he's going for, and things that he does in the novel. There's a lot of nested stories within stories, which gives him a variety of voices to speak with, and it's in a literary mode as well. And he's not often very literary. I mean, he is a literary writer in the sense that means textual and dense and thought-provoking and thoughtful. But this is one of the very few books of his that I think you could seriously see being put into this kind of like, this is this literary book, this literary fiction book, tricking people into thinking it's respectable. It is a fascinating book where some of the things, Wolfe can be difficult, can be cautious about giving up his secrets, the real secrets. There's usually a thing you can follow, a plot, but there are usually a bunch of, by secrets I don't mean weird, completely esoteric things. I mean things which, based on sometimes a lot of study of the words and the names and the exact references, but chiefly just a good reading, close reading of the book, followed by any extra research you want. There's a lot of other layers and things being implied. He's big at, Mark Aramini says this, big at telling you what is really going on via elision and via exclusion, by things that aren't mentioned but are implied, things like that. He's a very careful writer, very careful structurally, and this is arguably of the books I've read of his, a third of his novels or something, or just over that, I think, maybe 40%. This is probably the best structurally. This is it's ambitious structurally. There's things where you're not always clear what's coming together, but the way in which he draws the knot at the end is very good. Albeit it's still, it's also there are things, some of these mysteries or weird things are fairly quickly attainable, and some of the themes around death are very explicit and very open. So how far, and in fact some of the kind of, if you like, second layer questions about what he's not talking about and what he's not saying, you can are also pretty open. For instance, there's something with a character called Bobby Black, for instance, which is pretty open about some of what's going on. As an example, I'm saying that to people who read Peace, of course. So some of it is not like a great mystery or confusion, but what seems to me to be most Wolfian and most interesting is, and even more intense than with lots of his other books, is how far this goes down. You dig into another layer and another layer and another layer. Book of the New Sun does do this. All his books do it to a degree, even the short ones. But I mean, Book of the New Sun is the obvious comparison, and there's a few reasons for it being an obvious comparison. But it's that you get some of these weird ideas from just the first read, and you're digging through, and then but then some of it definitely you're going to have to read back, or you're going to have to read other people talk about. You're going to have to keep mulling over, and some of it, and it will come to you through the process of reflection. And it's not just that you are finding out about a literary mystery, if that's the right phrase, but that you are also dealing with an existential mystery. Wolfe is a writer who is very, very good at allusively and elusively bringing the reader to some sort of confrontation. It's kind of hard to describe in a way, partly because I bet some Wolfe readers will say, I've never had that happen. But I say for me, and I certainly see it when I read other people's work, essays and long Reddit posts on it. I definitely recommend r/Gene Wolfe, along with the many podcasts in the Wolfian sphere. But this confrontation with the stakes of a story and the stakes of human redemption, human sin, human fear and despair, grappling with nihilistic or anomie, nihilistic behaviour, nihilistic beliefs, anomie and alienation. And he is the par excellence author who does a lot of that stuff. And so it's kind of hard exactly to say. I mean, it's a very pretty novel. Alden Weirden is very, very interesting as a character. He is a complex and troubling narrator, but also one who, maybe even more than Severian in the Book of the New Sun, there are ways in which he's quite sympathetic and quite engaging, even though there's all these other weird things. We're like, what's going on with this? Who is this guy? The setting, which is a bit like this one sequence in The Longest Journey. But yeah, the setting is fascinating and communicates a lot of what must be going on without really explaining to you what's going on. And that's a clever and effective trick. He is very good at these tales within tales. Sometimes within tales, this is not a spoiler, but one tale within a tale is a story being told by Scheherazade, and within the story told by Scheherazade there is like a reference to another tale. So you have at one point, I think at least 3, but I think 4 tales being told at once. There is this kind of bottomlessness, which is, given that Wolfe thinks that he respects the reader, he says, enough to kind of give them complex stuff to deal with, because readers are clever and can do that. This as much as any of his works, and he says, and this is why it's in some ways what seems the breakout of mature Wolfe by some people, even more than Fifth Head of Cerberus. I think that is because it has this kind of very clear, it says from the start, it's the magician shows you half the prestige. They show you how it must be a trick. They say, come on, work it out. Come and look at it with me, work through it. And it's not a trick because it's about tricking you, but it's a trick because there's a fascinating mechanic going on here that tells you something about the human eye and our experience of objects, And I think that's what's going on here, is that Wolfe invites you into that. And there is a bottomlessness which you do not find wanting. You don't find out, it looks deep, but it is shallow. It looks deep and it is deeper. Is this the best introduction to Wolfe? This comes up occasionally. I think regular on the channel streams and on my Discord, Matthew Groves he's suggested no. Some people say yes, you'll find that. He'd say no because it is just less, though there are some things which are very open very quickly, and that's not always the case in Wolfe. The number of things that are going on, the number of questions does just seem to be a lot higher than... in Fifth Head, there are really a couple of thematic and plot questions. And I don't mean that in an insulting sense. What I mean is there are a couple of big questions and you have to answer them from the text. Whereas here, there's just this whole thing. This is everything. This is about as elusive and explosive and wide-ranging a book as any of his books. And in some limited senses, I think it may be even more so than Book of the New Sun, Wizard Knight. Books that are very much like that, but I think here it's so compact. It's, just over 300 pages, but so explosive. So it spreads itself all over the place. So yeah, I think if you haven't read any Wolfe, if you are into gritty, like nitty gritty, crunchy fiction, and you're patient, this might be good instruction. Otherwise, it's because it's a good length and it's got a lot going on. It's very archetypally Wolfian and it's not impenetrable. On the other hand, I think there are reasons why people suggest Book of the New Sun, Book of the Long Sun, Fifth Head of Cerberus as obvious places to go for an introduction, because for all kinds of reasons. But yeah, because the sheer density of this may be, in some ways, a strange or frustrating place to start. But I don't know. Yeah, if it sounds interesting, read it. I certainly recommend it. I would rank it highly within my experience of Wolfe. And I'm very glad I read it. So tell me your thoughts about Peace in the comments, and I'll see you next time.